My name is Jude Foster, 54 years old, a senior procurement operations manager at a regional aerospace manufacturing firm, homeowner, steady six-figure salary, zero debt, a life built entirely on cold, calculated logic, and forward planning. That logic was forged in the nightmare of my first life, a tragedy that landed me locked in a maximum security prison for life, convicted of stalking and attempted assault on Lila Bennett, the girl I'd loved more than anything as a teen ballet prodigy. Every single fabricated charge came straight from her lips, delivered on national television after she'd spent a decade touring the globe collecting every prestigious dance award the industry had to offer. Her final statement, spoken into microphones with red carpet makeup glinting off her sharp, polished lips, still echoes in my skull every time I close my eyes. This is what you owe Jax. I died in that prison cell at 41, a broken man who'd never once broken a single law against her. 1 second I was gasping for air on a moldy metal bunk. The next my consciousness snapped back into my 17-year-old body, hands resting on the weighted keys of a concert grand piano inside Westbrook High's dance studio. My fingers froze mid-arpeggio, hitting a wrong note loud enough to cut through the soft hum of classical backing music beneath Lila's pirouettes. The misstep threw Lila off balance. Her point shoe skidded across the marley floor, and she crumpled to her knees with a sharp gasp. Before her dance instructor could take a single step toward her, the studio's double doors slammed open, and Jax Rayner pushed through a pack of loitering seniors who'd been catcalling her through the glass wall for the last 10 minutes. "Hey, look at our girl killing it out there," one of his friends yelled, loud enough for every student in the room to hear. "Queen Lila's got all the moves. Jax, you hit the jackpot," another cheered. Jax didn't acknowledge any of them. He crossed the floor in 3 long strides, dropped to one knee beside Lila, and hauled her up against his chest like she belonged solely to him. His arm looped tight around her waist, lifting her clean off the ground bridal style while her cheeks flushed bright crimson, her gaze locked completely on his face, oblivious to every other person in the room. "Miss Hale," Lila twisted her ankle. "I'm taking her down to the nurse's station," he said, flat, commanding no room for argument. The instructor opened her mouth to protest, but Jax was already walking out the door, Lila pressed against his chest, both of them eating up every admiring glance from the onlookers. The crowd erupted in whistles and applause as they vanished into the hallway, a picture-perfect bad boy and golden girl romance straight out of a streaming teen drama. I stared down at my own hands, unscarred, unbroken, ears fully functional, no prison bars closing in around me. This wasn't a dream. I truly reset to the exact moment their toxic love story ignited, before Lila threw away her full-ride Juilliard audition, before the tattoos and late-night motel stays, before the pregnancy and abortion, before 10 years of self-destruction that culminated in her framing me for a crime I never committed. This time, I wasn't going to beg her to pick her future over Jax. I wouldn't waste years of my life pining for a girl who'd already made up her mind to chase reckless passion instead of the career every coach and talent scout swore she was born to dominate. I'd stand back, watch her make every terrible choice she was destined to make, and pour all my energy into the one person who'd never throw my kindness back in my face. Mia Carter, Lila's quiet, overlooked dance understudy who'd spent every rehearsal living in her shadow. By the end of first period, the entire junior class was buzzing about Lila and Jax's official relationship status. I slid my calculus textbook into my backpack without engaging with any of the chatter surrounding my desk. "Jude, you used to hang around Lila nonstop last semester. You're not even going to fight for her?" Tyler, one of my lab partners, leaned over the table, half teasing, half genuinely curious. "Come on, everyone knows you've had a crush on her since freshman year," another kid chimed in. "No way you measure up to Jax's bike and leather jacket, though. Any girl's going to pick the guy who rides fast and fights for her." I zipped my backpack shut and stood, offering nothing more than a blank, neutral stare. Her choice is her own business. I've got practice in the music wing. I left them gossiping and headed straight for the soundproof piano room, settling onto the bench to run through my college audition repertoire for hours on end. Outside the glass partition, I watched Lila and Jax's relationship unfold exactly the way I remembered it from my first life, every reckless milestone hitting one after another, without deviation. She'd stepped between Jax and a group of rival seniors during a parking lot brawl weeks prior, taking a fist to the shoulder to shield him, and that single act had wrapped Jax around her finger completely. He'd rearranged bus routes to walk her home after school, clear out the girls' restroom so she could touch up her makeup undisturbed, cover her detention shifts when she skipped class to ride motorcycles with him down the coastal highway at midnight. He'd drag her to street food stalls to buy meals for an elderly widow who sold homemade cookies off the sidewalk, take her up to the city's rooftop parking garage to watch fireworks over the river, pull her into frantic, open-mouthed kisses at the front of the lecture hall while every student watched. Lila, terrified of needles and any form of pain, got a sprawling tattoo of matching initials across her lower back to prove her devotion to him, ignoring every warning from her parents and dance coach about how permanent ink would ruin her professional ballet prospects. They'd sneak out to public parks to sleep overnight, book cheap roadside motels to spend weekends together without adult supervision, and when she wound up pregnant halfway through junior year, they snuck to an unlicensed downtown clinic to terminate the pregnancy without telling a single family member. Their reckless, all-consuming romance couldn't stay hidden forever. MS. Hale caught them skipping regional dance rehearsals, and Lila's parents found receipts from the motel and clinic tucked in her jacket pocket one laundry night. The confrontation that followed blew up in the family's upscale suburban living room. Her father, an Ivy League literature professor, voice cracking with rage as he listed every opportunity Lila was throwing away. He's dragging you down into nothing. Street fights, illegal bike races, no college plans, no stable income. What kind of life do you think you'll build with someone who can't even pass his history finals? Lila's mother, a hospital obstetrician, cut in, equally heartbroken. You sacrificed years of training for this boy. Your body's your career, Lila, and you're destroying it one bad decision at a time. If you truly care about him, step away and focus on your future. Every word of logic fell on deaf ears. Lila defended Jax fiercely, screaming that their love was too powerful to be limited by grades or money or career prospects. The school pulled Jax into mandatory disciplinary detention, even calling his grandmother into a parent-teacher conference to reprimand him for endangering Lila's academic and artistic future. His grandmother suffered from advanced dementia, barely able to follow the conversation, and the teacher's harsh, unforgiving tone sent the elderly woman into a panic so severe she lost control of her bladder right there in front of every other parent in the classroom. The entire room stared at her with a mix of disgust, pity, and embarrassment, and my mom recounted the whole incident to me over dinner that night, her tone soft with sympathy. Jax never had a stable home. He's been bouncing between neighbors and distant relatives since he was 8, fighting and racing bikes just to scrape together cash for his grandma's medication. It's hard to hate a kid who's only ever known neglect. That sympathy only made Lila cling tighter to him. She saw his suffering as a reason to devote every part of herself to his survival, blind to the cycle of self-destruction he was pulling her into. Not long after the conference, his grandmother passed away in her sleep, and Jax dropped out of high school entirely, deleting Lila's number from every device and cutting off all contact without explanation. The breakup was supposed to push her to refocus on ballet, but Lila's obsession only intensified. She couldn't accept that he'd walk away from their grand romance, and she resolved to track him down no matter the cost. Up until this point, I'd stayed completely out of their orbit, pouring every spare minute into piano practice and checking in on Mia Carter, who'd been left to fill Lila's lead dance spot after she vanished from rehearsals entirely. Her pointe shoes collected dust in the corner of the studio, the once bright center stage position empty at every practice. The entire routine lacking the spark Lila's natural talent had once brought to every performance. Ms. Hale pulled me aside after one afternoon rehearsal, desperation thick in her voice. Jude, you and Lila were inseparable for years. Could you reach out to her, convince her to come back? Master Lawrence exclusive elite audition is happening next month. If she misses it, she'll lose the only shot she's ever had to train with the world's most celebrated ballet choreographer. This opportunity doesn't come around twice. Lila's closest friend Mia stood beside the instructor, eyes glistening with insecurity, her dance uniform still damp from hours of extra practice to cover Lila's missing choreography. I'm nowhere near as talented as she is, Mia mumbled, staring down at her scuffed point shoes. I can't even nail a clean back bend without wobbling to miss. Hale wants me to take lead if Lila doesn't show, but I don't have the confidence to pull it off. A sharp jolt of memory hit me hard, a critical piece of foresight that cemented my resolve to stop wasting energy on Lila's doomed path. 10 years after I was locked away, Mia would be arrested for embezzlement at the prestigious dance conservatory she'd eventually attend, a charge that ruined her career before it ever fully took flight. Back in my first life, I'd watched every single one of Lila's sold-out international shows, and Mia had stood in the background for every performance, the loyal, selfless side character who'd willingly surrendered her own audition slot to keep Lila from missing out. Countless magazine interviews featured Mia gushing about how dance was her entire identity, how she'd never walk away from a stage, yet she'd still ended up behind bars over financial crimes she never would have committed if someone had stepped in to support her earlier on. I shut the piano lid and gestured for Mia to take her place at the bar, pulling out the sheet music for her solo routine. You're not inadequate. You're just living in Lila's shadow, and everyone's too busy fawning over her to notice how hard you work every single day. I slid onto the bench and positioned my fingers over the keys, ready to play her backing track. The worst mistake you can make right now is surrender before you've even given yourself a fair shot. We're going to practice until your movements are flawless, no matter how late we stay here tonight. Mia's shoulders relaxed, a faint flicker of hope lighting up her eyes. For the first time in years, I was focusing on someone who reciprocated care instead of draining every ounce of my energy for nothing. We practiced daily through the rest of junior year, my fingers raw from constant key pressure, her point shoes worn thin at the toes, ignoring all the chaotic drama unfolding between Lila and Jax outside the studio walls. Their fights, their secret meetups, their reckless midnight motorcycle rides, none of it mattered to me anymore. My only priority was building a future for myself and Mia, separate from the self-destructive couple determined to burn their own lives to the ground. For weeks after Jax dropped out of school and cut off contact, Lila stopped attending all classes entirely. Her parents had booked a full ballet scholarship program overseas to pull her away from Jax. Certain distance would erase her obsession, but Lila snuck out of the house every night to track him down at the underground street racing track, where he worked to earn cash. She found him leaning against his modified motorcycle after a race, his face cold and unyielding when he spotted her crossing the asphalt toward him. Go home, Lila. I'm not dragging you into this life with me, he'd snapped, turning to walk away. She blocked his path, tearing the flowing fabric of her dance dress clean down the side, swinging one leg over the seat of his motorcycle without hesitation. I remembered this moment vividly from my first life, the scene that sealed their fate forever. Lila had been terrified of two-wheeled vehicles since childhood, screaming and clinging to an adult's hand every time a bike passed her on the sidewalk, yet she threw all fear aside to prove her love for Jax. "You want to break up with me? Beat me in a race first, then I'll walk away and never bother you again." She revved the engine hard, the bike lurching forward down the empty coastal track, wind whipping her hair into her face as tears streamed down her cheeks. Halfway through the lap, the brakes failed entirely, sending her careening toward a concrete barrier. Jax dove off his own bike mid-race to grab her waist, yanking her clear of the crash at the last possible second, both of them collapsing onto the gravel, scraped and bruised but alive. That near-death scare only deepened their toxic codependency, solidifying their belief that their chaotic, dangerous love was fated to last forever. Lila gripped his face between her palms, sobbing uncontrollably against his skin. "I don't care about college, ballet, my parents, any of it. All I need is you. Just give me a chance to stay by your side." Jax's tough exterior crumbled completely, his thumbs wiping the tears off her cheeks as he pressed his lips to every streak of salt on her skin. The moment was captured on a spectator's phone camera, uploaded to every social media platform, and their tragic, dramatic romance became the most talked about story in our entire county. Not long after, Lila dragged Jax to her family's upscale home to confront her parents, announcing she planned to drop out of high school permanently to move in with him. Her father and mother begged her to reconsider, listing every privilege and opportunity she'd been handed her entire life, giving her an ultimatum: choose their stable, supportive family, or choose Jax and never step foot in their house again. Without a single second of hesitation, Lila chose him. "I don't want wealth or fame or a perfect career. I want a love that burns bright enough to outlast every boring, predictable life my parents planned for me." She posted her social media blog that night, a caption paired with a photo of her and Jax covered in scrapes from the motorcycle crash. Her father collapsed from a sudden cardiac arrest mid-argument, paramedics rushing him to the emergency room as Lila knelt on the driveway pavement, bowing her head twice toward the ambulance before grabbing Jax's hand and walking in the opposite direction, never glancing back at the house she'd grown up in. Every teacher and student whispered about her reckless choice, half pitying her wasted talent, half romanticizing her all-or-nothing devotion to the boy everyone knew would ruin her future. I continued showing up to the piano studio every single day, Mia by my side, our shared ambition creating a quiet bubble of stability amid the chaos swirling around Lila and Jax. While the rest of our classmates obsessed over their dramatic love story, Mia and I focused on our own separate dreams. I planned to attend the top-ranked conservatory on the southern coast, while she set her sights on a prestigious Vienna dance academy, determined to step onto international stages one day. As we wrapped up a 3-hour practice session one evening, Mia paused by the piano bench, her voice soft and hesitant, a faint blush spreading across her cheeks. "Jude, I hate to ask this, but would you keep playing accompaniment for me even after you graduate? I tried practicing solo last week, but my timing's all off without your music guiding my steps. I can't get through full routine without messing up key transitions." I closed the sheet music folder and shot her a quiet, genuine smile, a feeling of calm warmth settling in my chest that I never once experienced around Lila. Mia's quiet, steady dedication, her refusal to chase meaningless drama, her willingness to put in endless work for her goals. These were qualities I'd always valued, traits Lila had never possessed in the slightest. "You've spent every afternoon practicing alongside me for months, covering my piano runs when I needed to run extra drills. I'm not abandoning my only teammate the second I get my acceptance letter. I'll play for you every single day until you land your spot at that Vienna academy." Mia's face lit up, her eyes sparkling like starlight as she repeated the word teammate under her breath, a quiet, unspoken bond forming between us that had nothing to do with reckless teenage infatuation or desperate attempts to fill an emotional void. We didn't crave grand, destructive displays of love. We craved mutual growth, support, a future built on hard work instead of fleeting passion that burned hot and faded fast. The chapter's cliffhanger lands heavy as I pack up my sheet music for the night, my phone buzzing with a group chat notification from our junior class. A video clip uploaded by one of Jax's racing friends plays on my screen. Lila and Jax huddled together on a hard train seat, sharing a single cheap cup of instant noodles, their faces soft with oblivious happiness, completely unaware of the poverty, violence, and permanent loss waiting for them just a few years down the line. I stare at the screen, fully aware of every terrible fate they're barreling toward, and make a silent vow I intend to keep for the rest of this second life. I will never intervene, never beg Lila to change her path, never sacrifice my own peace to fix a choice she made of her own free will. This time, I'm only watching and focusing entirely on the girl who's worth every ounce of my effort, Mia Carter. I locked up the Music Wing's piano studio at dusk the same week our college audition results dropped, the stack of my acceptance paperwork tucked safely inside my leather satchel. Mia lingered by the bar, her point shoes frayed at the toe box, twisting the strap around her fingers while she stared at the rejection letter clutched in her palm. Master Lawrence Elite Summer Program had turned her down, the formal note printed on cream stationery, but our dance instructor pulled her aside after the final practice and offered genuine praise that softened the blow. "You didn't land the master's spot, Mia, but your technical growth this past year shocked every judge on the panel. Your precision and emotional control outshone half the dancers who moved on to the next round. Keep training, and I guarantee you'll land a far bigger opportunity before you turn 20. Mia tracked me down in the empty hallway once the instructor left, her cheeks flushed with nervous vulnerability, a quiet shyness clinging to every word she spoke. She twisted a woven fabric bracelet for me over months of late-night practice, stashing it in her dance bag, and I caught her tucking it back out of sight when she hesitated to hand it over. "I know it's silly to ask," she said, gaze fixed on the scuffed linoleum between our shoes, "but could you keep playing accompaniment for me through the summer? I tried running my solo routine without live piano last week, and every pivot, every weight shift feels disjointed. Recorded backing tracks don't match the pacing I need." I set my satchel down against the wall, leaning one hip against the cinder block, no trace of the cold detachment I'd kept around Lila all junior year. Mia's drive matched my own, a rare alignment of ambition I'd never found with anyone else, and I had zero intention of cutting off our rhythm just because I'd locked in my conservatory placement 3 states south. You log hundreds of hours, keeping me company through my audition recitals when I burned out on scales. I'm not ditching my practice partner the second graduation wraps. I'll clear my schedule every morning before my summer pre-college coursework to play for you, no exceptions. A small, brilliant smile broke across her face, the kind of quiet joy that didn't rely on chaos or grand public gestures. "Partner," she repeated softly, letting the words settle like a promise. "I'll hold you to that. We'll both make it to the stages we've dreamed of, separately at first, then meet again when we're both established." We exchanged contact updates that evening, saving each other's personal comms lines, but neither of us flooded the other with constant messages. We understood the weight of our individual goals, her bound for a prestigious Northern Dance Conservatory, me headed to the top Southern music program, and respected the space each needed to grind without distraction. Our connection was steady, unhurried, rooted in mutual respect rather than the desperate, codependent craving Lila and Jax clung to like lifelines. We'd hit like-minded friends' posts on social media occasionally, leave a short, encouraging comment, and otherwise stay focused on our own training schedules. No late-night emotional spirals, no dramatic ultimatums, no jealousy-fueled fights over third parties. A month after graduation, I boarded the cross-country passenger train bound for my new college town, hauling 2 hard-sided suitcases full of sheet music, keyboard gear, and minimal personal belongings. The passenger car was half empty, rows of worn vinyl seats stretching down either side of the aisle, and I spotted a familiar pair of silhouettes huddled together 3 rows ahead before I even sat down. Lila and Jax occupied a bench seat pressed up against the window, their heads leaned into one another's shoulders, oblivious to every other passenger around them. Jax held a cheap styrofoam cup of instant ramen between his palms, blowing gently on the steaming broth before lifting the fork to feed Lila bite by bite. She leaned into his chest, eyes half-lidded with contentment, utterly unbothered by the cramped, uncomfortable conditions of the hard train seat. The thin summer jacket Jax had draped over her shoulders, doing nothing to block the cold air blowing through the cracked window. "You haven't eaten anything solid since yesterday's street race payout," Lila murmured, pushing the cup back toward him. "You take the rest. I can wait until we meet up with your friend at the station." Jax shook his head, tapping her cheek lightly with a plastic fork. 5 more hours until we pull into the terminal. "I can hold out that long. You need the calories after walking the track all day with me." They passed the flimsy noodle cup back and forth, bickering soft and affectionate, completely blind to the long-term poverty they'd locked themselves into. To Lila, shared cheap ramen on a train counted as grand romantic sacrifice, proof their love could survive any hardship money might throw at them. She never paused to consider that the struggle wouldn't end once they reached their destination. It would only multiply as the years dragged on. No safety net of family funds or professional training to fall back on. I slid into an empty window seat several rows behind them, pulling out my tablet to review my fall semester piano syllabus, choosing not to cross their line of sight. I had no desire to interrupt their bubble, no urge to warn Lila of the suffering waiting ahead. This second life had taught me one unshakable truth. People only change when they choose to see the consequences of their own decisions, and Lila had no interest in listening to outside logic. 5 hours later, the train slowed to a stop at the industrial suburban terminal, the platform lined with beat-up pickup trucks and motorbikes instead of the luxury sedans my family would have sent to pick me up. A group of young men with dyed blonde hair and leather cutoffs clustered beside a rusted gray pickup, slapping Jax's back hard when he stepped off the train with Lila clinging to his arm. One guy they called Beast pumped Jax's fist in a rough greeting, shouting about underground fight rings and territory disputes as they herded the couple toward the truck's backseat. Lila was squished between 3 strangers in the cramped cargo bed, her hair whipping wildly in the autumn wind, the thin jacket Jax had given her flapping open to expose her bare arms. Jax wrapped one arm around her waist to hold her steady, but the fabric of his jacket was too thin to block the sharp chill rolling off the nearby industrial warehouses. I watched the pickup peel left onto a potholed side road, leading toward a rundown trailer park on the city's outskirts, while the university shuttle bus I'd pre-booked pulled up to the opposite side of the platform, polished white paint emblazoned with the conservatory's official logo. I boarded the shuttle without a second glance back at their vanishing truck, sliding into a window seat beside other incoming music students buzzing with excitement about recitals, masterclasses, and studio access. 2 vehicles, 2 completely divergent futures, splitting apart at the same crossroads, one leading to structured education, artistic opportunity, and stable growth, the other to unregulated street crime, financial ruin, and irreversible physical damage. I'd seen how their story ended in my first life, and I had no intention of letting their self-destruction drag me down with them again. My first break from conservatory coursework fell 6 weeks after move-in day, a 3-day fall break with no mandatory practice hours or group assignments. My college roommates dragged me to a downtown wellness spa downtown to unwind, a low-stakes trip I'd only agreed to after finishing a 12-hour marathon of piano rehearsals for my first midterm recital. The spa catered to regulars from all walks of life. Older female massage therapists lined up along the service counter, and the front desk attendant slid me a service slip for the youngest technician on staff when we checked in. "New guy here, right?" The youngest therapist's light-handed. "Perfect if you're not used to deep tissue pressure," she said, nodding toward the back treatment rooms. Her station number is 18. I glanced up as the young woman stepped out from behind the curtain to grab my service supplies, and my blood ran cold for half a second. IT was Lila. Her once bright, almond-shaped eyes were dull, hollow, the spark that had lit up every ballet stage long gone, and she ducked her head instantly the second she recognized my face, jaw clamped tight with embarrassment. She knelt beside my treatment chair to fill a pitcher of warm water, not uttering a single word, her hands shaking slightly as she poured the liquid into a basin. When she moved to rest her palms on my calves to start the foot massage portion of the service, I shifted my legs back gently, keeping my tone neutral, no trace of pity or judgment. Just upper body work for me today, skip the foot treatment. I didn't want to put her in a more humiliating position in front of my roommates, who were already snickering quietly from the waiting area, connecting the dots between the former town ballet prodigy and the spa technician assigned to my station. Lila inhaled shakily, stepping onto the elevated foot harness to climb onto my back for the deep tissue compression segment of the massage, her frame shockingly lighter than I remembered from high school. Every time she shifted her weight, silent tears dripped off her jaw onto my shoulder blades, warm damp spots seeping through the thin disposable treatment sheet covering my back. I stayed silent through the entire session, not pressing her for explanations, not offering empty words of comfort. Once the service wrapped up, I pulled every dollar of my weekly living stipend cash out of my wallet and set the $500 stack on the counter before heading for the exit with my roommates. I'd barely crossed the spa's front threshold when Lila sprinted out after me, snatching the cash off the pavement where it had scattered when she swatted it out of my hand. "Take your money back," she bit out, tears streaking down her cheeks, voice sharp with defensive rage. "Don't walk in here with your fancy college degree and act like you're better than me, looking down your nose at the life I chose. I never regret picking Jax. This job's just temporary." He got hurt picking up a birthday cake for me last week, ran afoul of the spa's owner over a territory dispute, so I picked up shifts to cover our rent. Her words were sharp, bitter, but underneath the anger was a raw, desperate fear that her choice had been the wrong one. I could read every flicker of insecurity in her eyes, even as she clung to her narrative of undying love and future success. I bent down to gather the loose bills she'd knocked away, folding them neatly back into my wallet, my expression calm. No heat in my response. "I'm not judging you. I genuinely hope everything works out exactly how you're imagining it will." My flat, unemotional well-wish only stoked her frustration further. She narrowed her eyes, shoulders tense like she was ready to pick a fight. "You're mocking me, same as all our old classmates. You think I'll end up miserable stuck here forever while you play piano in fancy concert halls?" I shook my head once, turning to follow my roommates to the parking lot without lingering to argue. No mockery, just honesty. Your choices are yours to live with. I won't interfere. On the drive back to campus, my roommate pulled up our old high school class group chat on his phone, shoving the screen in front of my face. Multiple classmates had visited the spa over the past few weeks, sharing photos and short video clips of Lila working the massage station, mocking the former elite ballerina reduced to catering to strangers' physical requests. Comments stacked one after another, cruel and condescending. Who'd believe this was our state ballet champion freshman year? Back then, we all worshipped her on stage. Now we can book her for a massage session. Hit the spa station 18 if you want to see the fallen star for yourself. I stared out the car window, ignoring the scrolling text, my mind replaying the image of Lila's tear-streaked face behind the spa counter. This was only the first layer of ruin waiting for her. The worst of Jax's reckless criminal activity hadn't even fully unraveled yet. The group chat's buzz faded into background noise as I pulled out my phone to send a short, encouraging text to Mia, who just posted a clip of her solo bar practice from her Northern Conservatory studio. I typed a single line. "Your turnout's sharper than ever. Keep pushing." She replied minutes later with a simple star emoji, no long dramatic paragraphs, no demands for constant attention, just quiet mutual support, the exact balance I'd spent my whole second life chasing. That night, a new notification popped up in the class group chat, a video clip uploaded by one of Jax's racing crew members. The footage was shot inside the spa's back break room, capturing Jax slapping Lila hard across the face again and again, screaming accusations loud enough for the camera mic to pick up every word. "You're out here letting random strangers touch you for cash, making me a joke to every guy in the crew. What happens if rival gangs get a hold of you to blackmail me over territory fights? I told you to stay home, not parade yourself around for tips." Lila dropped to her knees instantly, begging for forgiveness through broken sobs, repeating apologies over and over while Jax's friends stood around filming the altercation instead of stepping in to break it up. The clip spread through the group chat within minutes, classmates weighing in with a mix of pity and scorn, pointing out how drastically Lila's life had collapsed since high school. What none of them knew yet was that this violent outburst was only the start. Later that same night, Lila snuck out to join Jax's gang on a rival territory raid, wielding a steel pipe to smash up the competing crew's underground gambling den in an attempt to prove her loyalty to Jax. The fight escalated far beyond property damage. Rival gang members ambushed her on her walk home alone after the raid, dragging her into an abandoned construction lot to assault her. Photos of the attack leaked to local tabloids the next morning. Jax snapped completely when he saw the news headlines, hunting down every man involved in the assault and stabbing them with a switchblade, the attack vicious enough to land him felony assault charges. He was 17 days short of his 18th birthday when the judge handed down a 5-year prison sentence, leaving Lila stranded alone in the dangerous trailer park neighborhood with no family support, no stable income, and no one to shield her from the gang violence swirling around every corner. I locked my phone and set it face down on my dorm desk, the weight of knowing the full timeline of their suffering settling heavy in my chest. In my first life, I begged Lila to walk away from this path before it destroyed her, only to be punished with a lifetime prison sentence for her fabricated accusations. This time, I would keep every distance, focus on my own craft and Mia's growth, and let every consequence land exactly where it belonged, on the choices Lila and Jax had freely made together. The chapter's closing cliffhanger lands as I pull up Mia's latest dance reel on my laptop, watching her flawless pirouettes across a sunlit studio floor, a stark contrast to the chaos Lila's life has devolved into. A new alert pops up on my group chat. Jax's 5-year sentencing has been finalized, and Lila's been left to fend for herself in the gang's dangerous orbit, with no one to protect her from the retaliation coming her way. I closed the chat without reading a single additional comment, opening my sheet music to start my evening practice, determined not to let their tragedy derail the quiet, promising future I'm building for myself and Mia. 5 years passed in steady, unrushed increments, no dramatic chaos hijacking my days anymore. I graduated top of my conservatory cohort, locked in a permanent residency spot at a world-famous symphony hall, touring international venues half the year while keeping a quiet, furnished downtown condo back home. Mia finished her training at the Vienna Ballet Academy exactly as we'd promised each other as teens, landing principal dancer status with a top European troupe, collecting industry awards one after another. We'd kept our gentle, consistent bond all those years, short check-in messages between rehearsals, rare cross-continental visits when our tour schedules aligned, no suffocating codependency, no emotional blackmail, just two people who'd built their dreams side by side, without leaning on each other to fill empty gaps. We'd agreed early on to hold off on marriage until we were both 30, no rush to tie legal knots while our careers were still taking flight. That winter break, we flew back to our hometown together, coordinating schedules to spend New Year's Eve with both our families. Our parents hit it off instantly over dinner, sorting wedding venue details between courses, laughing through plans for a small, intimate ceremony with only our teachers and closest industry peers as guests. The conversation never turned to wild grand gestures or expensive displays. We both valued quiet stability above performative romance, a stark contrast to Lila and Jax's all-or-nothing toxic passion. After dinner, we took a slow stroll through our old neighborhood with a pack of sparklers Mia had picked up from a corner shop. The thin golden sparks lit up the sidewalk, and we wandered without direction until we passed the gated driveway of Lila's childhood family home. Loud, screaming arguments carried out through cracked windows, sharp enough to cut through the night's quiet hum. Mia's shoulders sagged with quiet sympathy as we slowed our pace to listen. "You know what my mom told me last week?" she said softly, kicking a loose stone across the pavement. "Lila moved back here 3 months ago. Her face is covered in scar tissue from gang fights. One of her toes was amputated after a rival crew jumped her mid-performance at a dive bar strip gig. Worst of all, she had a child with Jax while he was locked up, the baby's born with severe physical deformities from all the drugs and alcohol she relied on to cope alone. I didn't feel the sharp, crippling guilt that haunted me in my first life, the version of me who'd beg her to choose ballet before everything shattered. All I felt was calm, distant acknowledgement. Every scar, every loss, every broken relationship traced straight back to choices she'd fought tooth and nail to defend against every voice of reason. Her parents won't let her stay under their roof," Mia continued. "They shut the door the second she showed up with the baby. She's been camped out on their front porch for weeks, screaming that they failed her, that they pushed her straight into Jax's arms by refusing to understand her teenage heartbreak. None of it's her fault, according to her." I wrapped an arm around her waist, pulling her gently away from the noise drifting from the Bennett house. There's no use rehashing what ifs. She turned down every single lifeline anyone handed her. Mia rested her head against my shoulder for a minute, and we walked back toward my parents' house hand in hand, the sound of Lila's screaming fading behind us. A week later, our old high school group chat exploded with an unexpected notification. Jax had created an account after finishing his 5-year prison sentence, posting an open invitation for every former classmate to tune into his online wedding livestream that weekend. Curiosity pulled Mia and me to open the broadcast one quiet night after practice, just to see how far their spiral had sunk. The stream feed opened to a cheap rented makeshift studio set decked out in dollar store red wedding decor. Lila sat rigidly on a raised folding chair marked as the head wife spot in their gang's warped hierarchy, clutching a tiny, limp child with a cleft palate against her chest. Deep, thick scars crisscrossed her cheeks and jaw, the delicate ballerina features I'd once admired completely erased by years of violence and self-neglect. Her eyes were hollow, empty, no trace of the fiery passion she'd once worn like armor. The bride standing beside Jax was a young girl barely 20, a near-carbon copy of 17-year-old Lila, the exact brand of naive, starry-eyed teen Jax had always fixated on. The live stream chat blew up instantly, half the alumni flooding the feed with cruel mockery, others typing quiet, sad condolences no one in the broadcast would ever read. Jax paced the makeshift altar with a scowl, annoyed by Lila's blank, unsmiling stare directed at the camera. Mid-ceremony, he stepped forward and struck her hard across the face twice, the sound crackling loud through the stream speakers for every viewer to hear. Smile for the ceremony, goddammit, he snarled, leaning in close to the lens to broadcast his rage to hundreds of watching former classmates. You think you get to mope around after everything I've given you. You screamed Jude's name every single night we shared a bed back when we were teens. Don't act like you're the victim here. I'm only marrying someone new because you were always pining over that piano geek. Mia stiffened beside me on the couch, her fingers tightening around my forearm as we watched the nightmare unfold. Lila said nothing through the blows, just squeezed her disabled infant tighter to her chest, the baby's limbs limp and unresponsive in her grip. After a minute of brutal silence, she lifted her head and locked eyes directly with the camera, speaking clear enough for every mic to pick up every bitter syllable. You're right, I regret every single choice I ever made when I picked you over everything I could have had. If I'd stayed on stage, stuck with Jude's accompaniment, none of this ruin would have touched me or my child. A bitter, hysteric laugh tore out of her throat right after the confession. But we're bound together forever, Jax. You destroyed me. I dragged you into every dark fight I joined to prove my loyalty. We'll rot side by side for the rest of our lives. Even our kid gets stuck with our mess. Before anyone could process her words, she pulled a concealed handgun from the folds of her second-hand red silk dress. Chaos erupted instantly. Screams, crashing furniture, gunfire ringing through the live stream audio, the camera shaking wildly as guests and gang members scrambled to flee the small room. Flames flickered into view at the edge of the frame seconds later, fabric decor catching fire from a stray bullet spark, and the feed cut to black mid-panic. The broadcast abruptly terminated. Local news alerts blew up our phones within 10 minutes. Headlines screamed about a gang wedding mass shooting and subsequent structure fire, dozens hospitalized, multiple fatalities confirmed. The group chat devolved into frantic, horrified threads dissecting every second of the live stream, alumni passing around clipped screenshots and audio recordings to rehash the tragedy for days afterward. The entire criminal organization Jax and Lila ran with was raided by state police in the aftermath. Hundreds of associates arrested on racketeering, assault, and weapons charges, the whole underground network collapsing overnight. Months slipped past, and the chaos of that live stream faded from public conversation, replaced by fresh entertainment cycles and new local headlines. Mia and I stayed focused on our own careers, flying between concert halls and ballet stages across Europe and North America, our bond growing softer and more secure with every quiet month we spent together without unnecessary drama weighing us down. We filed legal marriage paperwork quietly at City Hall the summer we turned 30, scheduling a small celebration months later for all our mentors, peers, and immediate family. No wild spectacle, no performative displays of love, just gentle, steady joy shared with people who'd supported our growth from the very start. We discussed kids at length late one night after a sold-out Vienna performance, sitting on a balcony overlooking the glowing city skyline. Mia's body had endured decades of grueling professional ballet training, joint damage, and chronic stress injuries that made pregnancy a severe medical risk, and neither of us craved the chaos of raising a child while juggling global touring schedules. We agreed unanimously to remain child-free, fully comfortable building our lives around our art and each other, without the pressure to follow society's standard family blueprint. I never once asked her to sacrifice her stage career for domesticity, just as she never expected me to abandon concert touring to settle down full-time in one city. We lifted each other up instead of demanding compromise, the exact opposite of Lila and Jax's codependent, suffocating dynamic that required one person to erase their identity entirely to keep the other happy. One evening years later, we sat side by side on our condo balcony after a joint hometown performance, sipping wine and watching the sunset bleed pink over the skyline. Mia leaned her head on my shoulder, her hand laced loosely through mine on the metal railing between us. Do you ever think about what would have happened if you chased Lila the way you did in your first life? She asked, quiet and curious, no trace of jealousy in her tone. She knew every detail of my past trauma, the false conviction and lifetime prison sentence that had sent me back to 17 with a second chance. I stared out at the quiet city streets, no lingering longing or regret lingering in my chest. All the grief I'd carried for the wasted, brilliant ballerina faded completely years ago, replaced by gratitude for the quiet, fulfilling life I'd built by choosing to walk away from someone determined to self-destruct. I wasted an entire lifetime begging someone to save herself when she never wanted to be pulled from the path she chose.